Hey guys.
Hey Phil, how you been, man?
Good. Good.
Good. We got Jon on the phone, we got Dennis on video, and we got me. And then I just kind of want to talk a little bit about the scene originally, and then stop motion in general, and all of that fun stuff. I'll ask just each of you, what's your favorite out of the chess monsters?
My favorite is the green guy that picks up the little yellow guy. So when I was a teenager, I made the green guy. And that's kind of what gave George the idea to do it with stop motion. And then Jon made the little yellow guy, and he animated the main characters, and I animated all the guys that were looking.
And I don't know if I have a favorite, having sort of, except for the one that Phil made years before, seeing them all kind of for the first time. I just see them as sort of as a group, they're all pretty loony and funny and, and cute and
wild. Jon?
I'll go with I'll make it unanimous. I think the green guy, that was always terrific. And I remember when Phil had it at the shop where we were doing the cantina masks and seeing it before that. But and I remember, I think that's one of the things that when Gary and George came by the shop to check out progress on the cantina pieces, he noticed that and it incorporated it for the chess game sequence very, very understandably. It's really, I think that was a great little piece.
It wasn't that big a deal to convince George, they were the ones to do it. I remember him holding one of them up and looking at it and saying, "That's great. You could sell these." Whoa, I had never, ever thought of that.
Where does this passion for stop motion come from? All three of you have done amazing stop motion stuff. Just seems like forever. Jon, you want to start us on that?
Well, when I was a little boy, and I mean a little boy, 3 or 4 years old, my half sister, I'd go and visit her periodically, and she wanted to take me to a movie, and she took me to see Mighty Joe Young. She didn't realize at the time, she thought it was kind of like a Lassie movie with a big gorilla. How she drew that conclusion, I don't know. And it left, obviously, an indelible mark. I remember the sequence where Joe is pitching boulders at this cowboy. And I remember watching it through crossed fingers over my eyes. But that really stayed with me. And then when I got older, I saw some arrays. The big thing that really caught my hooked me was seeing King Kong when it was released onto television in 1956, I think, and I was snagged permanently.
Phil, similar story. What hooked you into it?
Almost identically the same story. King Kong was 5 years old. Had no idea what I was looking at, but it was magical. That kind of led me on a whole escapade for many, many years studying dinosaurs and paleontology and all that stuff. And then it was, we all have the same story. We were electrified in '58 with some Forge of Sinbad, and when that Cyclops came out, that was it.
Dennis, I have a feeling you're going to just go like ditto, but what's what say you?
Pretty much the same. I've always loved other type of effects about as much as stop motion, though. The dams breaking, War of the Worlds, that stuff always grabbed. But there was something, about stop motion that I always was thinking it was kind of the chatter of it and the way the setups were so usually magical and wonderful, especially in the days of Kong, stuff like that. But I sort of realized very, very recently that the real love from it, I think, came from the designs of the characters and the performances. Because there's been other stop motion shows that I just didn't care about. There's been other effects things with giant creatures that the creatures didn't do anything. I didn't care about them. And I think what was happening was the attitudes of those characters were coming through, and the settings and the situations they were forced into and their reaction is really what I was responding to. The other stuff was more secondary, but that's all that you could verbalize or all that you could kind of recreate when you got home was kind of an artifact that you could, of how it was made. without ever really getting to the core of what got you there. And I don't have any acting skills or even could have imagined then translating it into something else, you know, with people doing it, going through the same angst and everything. So anyway.
No, that's fantastic. I think it resonates with me. I was always, I mean, obviously stop motion got me very young as well, but, and puppetry in general. And I think there's that similar thing where you can say with puppetry, it is the sense of character that you get out of these things, any effect. It's, it's not just that it fooled you. It's not just that it looked good, but it's that the design had character, that the character was able to emote. I mean, and a lot of that is down to, for me, I'm sort of second generation, I guess, here, because you guys were my heroes growing up. I would look at the stuff Phil was doing and the effects that Jon was putting, that Dennis was putting on the screen, and the monsters Jon was making. And as 5 years old, Tom had the same electrification that a 5-year-old Phil had looking at King Kong. And I was lucky enough that I still had King Kong and Mighty Joe Young too, that ran on Channel 9 every Thanksgiving, and I would watch them back to back every year. I already know the answers to some of these, but who are some of the heroes that sparked you guys? Besides just the movies, who are these people behind the scenes that made you guys just want to jump into this? Phil.
Well, information back then was very sparse, so, there were no periodicals or anything other than Famous Monsters of Filmland that Forey Ackerman edited. And Forey was a friend of Ray Harryhausen and Ray Bradbury's. And then when Ray was in town stumping his for publicity for his movies, he would invite us to come and meet Ray. And, that was really, the only way into any of this stuff, the only way you could access it. So, and then, the heroes for me, there were two heroes. It was O'Brien and Harryhausen, and that was about it for me.
Well, and was it a right place, right time thing with Forey? Like, if you had grown up on the East Coast, would you have ever had that kind of connection?
Proximity to LA made everything possible for all of us.
That's incredible. Jon and Dennis, heroes?
Well, I could go with
Dennis, sorry.
Ron Fulton, who did a lot of great effects work in it. Although I didn't care for the Ten Commandments. I'm the only one that doesn't like that work. But some of the other stuff he did was just phenomenal in it. And, sort of Obie and Ray, we all would visit Ray. I went when I was like 14 years old out to a house. My mom drove me out to Malibu, and, Phil would show up and Jon would at Forey's house whenever Ray was there. And I'd try to be there. And, there was somebody you could look at and talk to, and it was a human being, and I don't even think I could ever relate to being him because I didn't have this at all the same skill sets. But there was just such an admiration for someone who could bring to me, we don't even know each other, such excitement inside, and you could carry away for months after seeing the movie in the theater, and it's a love affair as much with him as it is with the movies.
I absolutely get it. Jon.
Well, I think two other people occur to me. I agree completely with Phil and Dennis. There was a wonder, and still is. I watched a little bit of Kong not long ago, and and my little boy is completely alive with that. But before I discovered what stop motion was, Walt Disney and the things he did, that somebody could take a drawn figure and imbue it with life. And that was something I actually got when I was in grade school. I would do little flip books because the basic principle I could understand. Then I saw some of the early George Pal Puppetoons, and I couldn't make the leap that it was the same process as flatbed animation, but the shadows and the dimensions of the thing were so compelling, and it generated more of this curiosity of how was this achieved, because it looked real in terms of physical objects, but I had no concept that you could take and do that kind of thing with three-dimensional figures. And that magic, when I started to see, I still remember, as I'm sure Dennis and Phil clearly indicate, Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and that Cyclops, and all of the stuff that Ray did. I couldn't bridge the gap. That can't be real. That can't be real. It doesn't move quite the same as everything else. That chatter was an attraction, and generated this fantastic curiosity and passion. And then to find out bit at a time through dear old Forey. He's for what it sounds like Dennis and Phil are describing is certainly my impression. He was like a hub where you could actually connect to not just the objects, which Forey had a number of those things, but you could meet Ray Harryhausen, who his magazine introduced me to understanding who Ray was. They and Obi, it is a magical thing and still functions that way for me. I hope till my dying day I never lose that fascination and capacity to be thrilled by work I've seen hundreds of times.
I suspect you will never lose that, Jon. I think you've got that inner child spark that so many of us carry around. I'd find it very hard to believe you'd ever lose that. So you guys, you talk about going to Forey's. How old are you all at this point? Phil, where did you intersect with Jon and Dennis? And was it Forey? Was it something else? Where did you guys initially connect and become friends and start sharing all of this?
Well, somehow I was able to get in touch with Jim Danforth, who I knew was working at Cascade Pictures of California. And he was also one of my heroes. And so I drove up with one of my first mentors, Bill Stromberg, to LA. I mean, it was before I could drive. So I was probably 15 or 16 years old. And Jim gave us a tour. And on that day, I recall Dennis was there showing the effects reel of the Equinox. And boy, it was just that's when I first met Dennis, and then over the years we became friends. I think I met Jon at Forey's place in one of his soirees.
Did you guys, so this is all well prior to Star Wars. Cascade's another one of those sort of nexuses, is that the right word? That's a name that comes up so often talking to so many of these people who are still friends connected together. Is it just the passion for the work, Dennis? Is it the passion for the source material? What do you think kind of held you guys together on this stuff?
Well, I think we all saw ourselves in each other. I mean, we would have long conversations for hours about the Cyclops on the beach in Sinbad. How could we? I don't even think we could do that today. I don't know if anybody does that today about a scene in a Marvel movie or anything else. They might, but then it was so fleeting and so important to all of us just to express it and to relive it in our own minds or something or other. I don't know how it happened or what, but then we would be doing it, and so we'd be able to see each other's work and all and appreciate it. And it was just like it was a job also too. We got paid, which we needed. We all needed money, so we got older. And I'm talking about 20, 22 or something like that. So we're not that old, but the department was run by Phil Kellison, who was a guy who'd worked with Pal on the Puppetoons and all, and worked with Ned Mann years before somehow. And he just loved it, and he loved to help people. So he would help us. He would give us the jobs when he could. Some of us worked there for years. I was usually on and off. Because I was mainly a camera guy. I couldn't animate really or anything worth beans. And they already had 3 cameramen. But if there was a need for another one, I was there and I tried to get in and do some work on it or something. So he just kept us going. He, fed us, and he was also a direct link to the past. He had worked on Giant Behemoth and worked with Obi. So, and worked with Ray. And he actually didn't work with Ray, but he was around there sort of the same time in the Puppet Tunes. So, and this was all a Cascade, which was like 3 blocks from the first Mac Sennett studio, down the street from Charlie Chaplin's place. I mean, like Phil was saying about proximity, I used to never thought it made any difference. We didn't get none of us got any breaks from any family members or anything. But boy, it was so important to be around that stuff. We were just very, very lucky, and we fed each other. As Phil Kellison fed us with the past, we fed each other with the presents, and we've tried to still with younger people coming in.
Hey, Dennis brings up a good point that we saw these movies generally once, and they had to live in our memories until they came around again 10 years later, pretty much. And they came on television much later, and they came on television in black and white. And so that I think really helped us a lot conceptually, is like we just churned this stuff. We lived it. We lived and breathed it. I would spend my lawn mowing money sending $1.50 to Movie Star News to get stills from all these movies, and just like, I would look at them while falling asleep. I mean, it was just like breathing, and it was totally obsessive.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there who still share that and who have done that now with your work, which is just, an incredible part of the cycle there. Dennis, are you still good for a couple more minutes?
Yeah, maybe 4 or 5.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you one of technical question. Then I know you brought something out. Do you want to show us what you?
I just broke a foot off of. I'm sure you'll be able to recognize this. This is my beginning and the end of my talents for sculpting. This, you can tell what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's the Emir fighting the beast in 20,000 fathoms. And I just broke his foot off after all these years, and this has got to be, I don't know what, 60 years old or something like that. But you kind of look and you see why why all the work you're doing is with Phil and Jon.
Oh, good.
I thought it was.
Turn a light on. I'll do that. I'll turn a light on and maybe put a lens on or something like that.
I thought it was the Cyclops fighting the dragon.
That's right.
Hey, it might have been, but no, this was done way before then, I think.
Wow.
I think it was done right after.
Is there a bit of the Emir in the in the green guy from Star Wars?
I wasn't thinking that.
Yeah,
no. I mean, that was one of the things that I think we're all on the same page with. I mean, Dennis did that thing when he was really young, but I never wanted to duplicate what I saw, in a fan kind of way. I wanted to make something I'd never seen before,
Yeah, and a lot of these chess guys qualify as that. Dennis, I got one kind of tech question for you, and then I don't want to hold you too long. In this sort of, you guys were operating in a pre-digital age. How challenging was the alignment on these shots?
I thought it was a piece of cake. There was nothing hard about it at all. To go back to something that I think is true of all of us, the fact that we didn't have access to these imagery after we'd see it in the theater, we forced ourselves to learn to keep images in our head. And that allows you to sort of rethink it. And then after a while, you can recalibrate and imagine the scene shot from a different angle, how important things need to be. And you find out what's important and what isn't important to move it and moving ahead on something. That's this sequence. There's no real critical thing going on as far as contact with the characters on the ground. We had a plan layout from England of what the chess set looked like. You know, so we knew the sort of the size they were supposed to be, but we could make them a little bigger or smaller. Nobody would know. So it wasn't that big a deal. Nowadays, people would go in and they'd have they'd be, computering everything, scanning it all, know exactly this to that. But, those of us who were lucky or whatever, or unlucky enough to have to do it, to figure it out for ourselves, you can sort of figure it out in your head before you even go. So I don't remember a lot of critical stuff. If we were, it was only because I didn't want to make a mistake. But there's not much of a mistake to be made in that stuff. And, it's a hologram, right? It doesn't want to be perfect.
Right.
The whole thing, even shit, nowadays, I think it'd be nice to actually have all the pieces a little bit maybe separated and jiggling slightly different from each other or something, if that even matters. I don't know.
I just want to emphasize something Dennis said,
Yeah.
and that is the wonderful, amazing, and I think profoundly unique contribution that Phil Kellison made to my life, all our lives. I don't know that there is anything comparable for guys at our age at that time. Phil was the perfect mentor. This whole thing, as I get older and I look back at my incredible good fortune, it's like a synchronicity driven by our common inspiration by the films of Ray and Obie and George Powell and others. And Phil was the perfect, incredibly tolerant and nurturing mentor. And I don't know if there's anybody out there for the CG crowd like this. It's too organized and too big a business, it seems like, in so many ways. And I can't pay enough homage to Phil Kellison. I don't know where I would have wound up if it hadn't been for Cascade.
Right.
Yeah,
I just wanted to...
he was, a very important mentor. And, I've been really lucky to be able to turn things around that way, and bring on, a bunch of young people and work with them and kind of show them the ropes. And then for all of the subsequent chess scene that have been done for, for the other Star Wars movies, I was able to hire these guys that missed the boat and worked as digital artists. And it was a great opportunity for them to come in and animate. And if you analyze the quality of the animation from what Jon and I did to what these guys are doing, it's technically far superior.
I also wanted to respect what you have done, not just in terms of the body of work you've generated, but giving people like us an opportunity that they wouldn't have otherwise, and to be exposed to that through your company and given the opportunities, I just think is a wonderful contribution commensurate with the work you've done. I really respect that.
That all came from Phil Kellison and the example of himself.
I got to run, but let me just say one more thing I just thought of about Phil. We may have been the only people that he really could talk to about the old days. The people we know, the small crew he had with him, they were all pretty much straight guys, camera guys, machinists, 4 or 5 of them. And there were a few other people in the company that had worked at Hal Roach and all like that. But, here these kids come along that are interested in him and what he's done. And that has to have been, really fun for him and feeling like he was nurturing us along the way. And it was great that he was open to that and helping us along. So
thanks again, man. We really appreciate you being part of this.
All right. Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Now that we've gotten rid of him, we can tell the truth, Jon.
Excellent.
You start shoveling first. One of the things that happened recently, Lisa and I contacted Phil Kellison's son, Peter, because of the wonderful contributions he's made. We feel that should be documented. And in talking to Peter, he did something that still warms my heart to think about. When Dennis and Phil invited me along to go and visit Phil, where he lived in Sacramento after he retired, Peter said that his dad was so touched and not a little surprised that these three now adult professionals would want to go and visit him. It made his heart really warm, and Peter expressed a lot of gratitude for that. And I appreciate Dennis and Phil inviting me along on that wonderful trip. And Phil Tellison was such a modest man, and that he should have been surprised that people whose lives he touched so profoundly would want to go and see him and express their appreciation for the large part he played in all our lives. He was a really wonderful man.
That's outstanding. You're going to make me all weepy over here. Phil, is there, I'm just thinking, Jon just mentioned how humble the other Phil was. Is there something that happens? I know a lot of puppeteers and things like that, not necessarily stop motion, but I find that a lot of them can be on the more, humble side of things. Is there something that happens to someone who's intentionally behind the camera or under the set that, I don't know, makes them gives them a little more humility maybe than the people who want to be shining stars out in front of the camera?
This is what we dreamed to do. And, the dreams came true. And we all knew at the time that we were so lucky, that we were really appreciative we were basically left alone to do our thing, and, if you go up to George and ask him what he thought, the Kanban or whatever should do, he goes like, I don't know, you guys do that stuff. I don't do it. I just direct the movie. And his when Jon and I, we had no time to make the chess set. And it was just in a matter of like, I think a couple of weeks, we had to bang out these creatures. And we had a cardboard box and we brought them in and put them on the set in the cardboard box and asked George what he wanted. He goes like, I don't know. Maybe this little yellow guy pops in and the green guy picks him up and throws him on the ground and everybody else is watching. And it's like, okay. So we did that. And I think we shot, tell me if I'm wrong, Jon, but I think we shot over 2 or 3 nights. Dennis did the main setups. Kim Ralston assisted him. And I recall that on the last night, this was right at the end of the schedule, the very end. And we were behind Black Flats and ILM was having its rap party. So everybody else was hooting it up and drinking and carrying on. And then we were trying to concentrate on doing this stuff.
Yeah, and you're handling what, 6 characters there at the same time while they were all hooting up?
Yeah, but no one was looking at them. They were just looking at the main action. And so I just did my best. And strangely enough, when you have a lot of things to do, it just takes more time. It's really not that hard. You just remember what everything is doing somehow. I don't know. I've never had dummy sheets or, anything like that. It was just like, well, you just start and see what happens.
One of the things I remember on that, it because of the pressure of the schedule, and Phil's memory matches mine. And I seem to recall we went in the afternoon because that was the crew with Ken and Dennis. And the last day on the thing, we'd start in the afternoon, and the last day was an extended effort to get it done. And it seems to me we wound up leaving ILM to go home at dawn.
Yeah, but there were so many of those days, when we were laying out when George was choosing, where everything should be relative to, I think Dennis and Ken made some white cardboard strips that roughly approximated the zones that the characters would go in, because there was no logic to the game at all. And and so George, compose where the characters should be. And we had made 10 characters. And so George started placing them, and then there just wasn't a room for 2 of the characters. And so those got cut from the movie. And it was kind of an appreciation for Dennis turning George on to us. I made one, Jon made one. I made the red guy, he made the green guy, and we gave him to Dennis for a thank you gift. And Dennis held on to them, and then when Ron Howard was doing the version of Star Wars that happened before Star Wars, we pitched to him the idea of bringing those characters back in, and he went for it. And then also what we had noticed was one of the actors had hit a button at the perfect time where these characters could disappear and knocked a part off of the set that you could see go boing, and we put a little sparks in, and the characters went boogie.
And that's
why they work in Star Wars.
It was a beautiful Easter egg. I love those 2 little characters too. They are equally. I feel like Jon's is kind of cute and yours is kind of scary. But,
yeah, that's the way it kind of worked.
Oh yeah. Is that a design sensibility for you guys, Jon? Do you think you steer towards a different sensibility maybe than some of Phil's designs?
I think maybe I think all of them. This phrase would apply to all of them, but I think the whimsy. I think they're all kind of twisted whimsy. I think I just because I'm so steeped in a lot of the Warner Brothers sensibility, the Chuck Jones and Tex Avery stuff, that just comes out whatever I seem to try to do. I don't know if I could do scary, not like Phil. That's the best answer I got for you. It's unintentional. It's the subconscious coming through our physiology to wind up with rubber or clay or whatever we're working with.
So unintentional twisted whimsy. I like it. Phil, so Jon just accused you of being scary. How do you feel about that?
Well, you do whatever is called for, and those particular characters were, they certainly filled that description. But I was always more kind of drawn to the horrific kind of thing. Kind of like, by the way, you did a great job in the Rancor back there.
Oh, thank you so much.
But I always had an issue with George, and one of his problems with the Rancor that we have to kind of solve is the faces were never super clear, and he always wanted them to be very clear. And I did a design for Howard the Duck of the creature that was a lot more Lovecraftian and a lot more bug-like. And George always wanted to, because I found the horror in those things to be a certain level of abstraction where you couldn't really grab onto it. And that makes the characters is like, I've never seen anything like that before.
And it's scarier, I think, if you don't have human characteristics to lock onto. You now have to not just say, I'm afraid of this, but what is this?
No, I think you see monster before you recognize its attributes. It's just like, it's like looking at a bear. You're not thinking bear, you're thinking,
Your description makes me think of that scene in Alien where the Sigourney Weaver character is in this chamber, and the strobe lights are going off, and you get a shot of the alien, and it's just all these coils and creepy things, and your mind just kind of goes nuts. I think Phil captures a lot of that stuff wonderfully, that abstraction.
Yeah, that's a really good example and inspiration for that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. So Phil, you talked a little bit about revisiting the Star Wars chess scene for the new Star Wars movies. what was that like? You know, how does, that's a very involved process, you know, and I've seen you guys put together a video on that that was pretty great, but can you kind of just you know, talk folks through a little bit of that process, how you not just brought these back, because they could have done it just CG and not even included you guys, but for them to go to you and for you to go to the original stuff at the archives, like what's that process like? How much work went into just bringing this little group of monsters back?
It was a big deal. You know, we had kind of had to, it was kind of like an archaeological or paleontological reconstruction, because we had given, Jon and I had given the chess set figures to George in appreciation. And over the years, they had crumbled, and some of them been given away to Peter Jackson, and some of them had just disappeared and had to be completely reconstructed. And so that was a huge deal of, you know, taking pictures of what we could, scanning them, getting them into the computer, doing, you know, the archaeological, you know, refabrication, getting those things 3D printed and molds made and blah, blah, blah. The materials were completely different. We used, a lot of those characters were just either pure Sculpey or, you know, upholstery foam. And then the green guy was foam latex. And so, you know, that was, the materials totally changed to like all silicone, which is much more resilient and resistant. And then we had a professional armature maker make really good. The armatures that was in the Gree guy I made like when I was, you know, 17 years old. It was really crappy. And, you know, then we got to do that. And then, yeah, we got together, you know, Dennis came in to, you know, give some of his guidance on the lighting, and, you know, then Jon came, and it was kind of a way like, I don't know, it kind of sounds preposterous, but like the old gunslingers or the old knights kind of handing over their 6-shooters or their swords to the young guys, because we didn't want to do it anymore. We've done it. You know, we killed enough bad guys. So, you know, now it was their turn, you know, and that was actually very satisfying.
That's, yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say, I love the word archaeological, because that's sort of how we felt, even just going from the digital you gave us to work on this edition here. You know, we even went back, so there were those 2 that were kind of lost that you guys recreated. And we went back to those, the scrapbook photos that you gave us and some of the other pictures that you had found, and started to find little things on those. And we really got, you know, into the nitty gritty on like, this guy's antenna should be here and that sort of stuff. And it's like something to sink your teeth into, to try and recreate something as perfectly as you can and still have it have some character and some fun and some pose and some action. And
yeah, you did a great job. I mean, those are as accurate replicas as you're ever going to get. I mean, if you put them side by side with the real guys, I would, you know, ask me to pick which one. I couldn't tell you unless I touched it. Yeah, but
thank you very, very much. And honestly, a lot of that is down to you and all the assistance you gave us along the way. And I'm really glad the 3 of you, you know, came together to sign the plaques and stuff too. You know, we get a lot of feedback from fans that they like that kind of thing. They enjoy having, you know, so I like giving credit to the creators of this stuff. You know, a lot of people want actors' names on things like that, and that's cool. But I love having the people that made stuff a part of us remaking the stuff, and like trying to give people something special that maybe shines a little spotlight here and there on the guys behind the scenes who mean so much to me. I was going to say meant, but still do, because you're all still here, thankfully.
yeah, you know, if you were alive in the late 50s, it would have been great, because you would have done, you know, a bunch of Ray's characters, that's what I wanted. You know, back then I would have to mow a lot of lawns, but I would have come up with the dough.
Yeah, Jon, you know, I'm just gonna, this is kind of a broader kind of question. How does it feel just knowing the impact that this work that you did, not just even on this chess scene, but this may be particular just because that's what we're talking about, but how does it feel knowing that, you know, you guys are behind something that means so much to people?
Well, this kind of brings up a point I wanted to mention before we conclude, and I'm sorry he had to take off, but I just wanted to pay tribute to the wonderful contribution Dennis has made to our lives. If it hadn't been for him, I wouldn't have been involved in any of this stuff. He was the bridge, the link for me to become involved in all of this stuff. And my time working with Phil on all of these things is one of my most treasured experiences of my life. And as a artifact of that, a living artifact, that picture, the first Star Wars, was many decades ago now, and to still feel this wonderful bond and friendship, even though we don't always see each other very often, is a real testament to the bond that was made over these many years and all kinds of projects. From the first project that Phil and I ever collaborated on was painting a wall, a brick wall at Cascade on stage 6, where they wanted to redress and try to look like they were coming into the hip 70s. And the embrace of the chess game and the cantina and so many things that are now have been acculturated into the world is still kind of like I am stunned by that.
You know, you work with crews and the crews disperse, and you may not see, you know, any of those people again until somehow you collide, and maybe, like, you know, 8 years later you're working together on a movie, and you bring back, you know, I mean, it's just like stepping through a door, you know, or having a family member come and visit. You pick up where you left off, but you don't see those people for years. But, you know, Jon and I and Dennis live in the same, you know, basic area. And so we have stayed in touch, you know, all these times, occasionally go out for lunch and do that. And as Jon said, you know, there was that bond that, I mean, it goes way back to King Kong and Seven Voyages of Sinbad, you know, and similar interests. I mean, it was like being part of a church or something like that, you know. And you know, the camaraderie that we all shared with the crews when we were working on, you know, like Empire and Jedi and all of those, you know, with Tom Sanamon and Joe Johnston and Milo in the art department, and we just had fun together, you know. After on Friday night, we'd get a bunch of beer and go up into Joe's art department and play darts until 10 o'clock at night.
Everything you're saying resonates with me too, because I sort of see it in the crew that I've got and in the people that I work with and have worked with for years in some cases. It's that same idea of, you know, that shared interest, that shared passion, whether it's for a technique, whether it's for a particular monster or a movie or whatever, you know, you would just, that was what you spent your time talking about. That's what you were trying to do. As a kid, I was a kid in the 70s and 80s. We still didn't really have the chance to see the movie again. Like, my family didn't get a VCR till the mid 80s. So you saw the movie once in the theater, and then you lived it through toys or maybe a comic book or a magazine, or talking to your friends about how did they do that? How did they make this guy do that? You know, we would just be trying to figure it out as kids. All my friends wanted to be, you know, Luke Skywalker or Han Solo, and I'm there wanting to be Rick Baker or Phil Tippett, you know. Like,
yeah, but you know, I had nobody. You know, there was, when I was growing up, there was nobody that was even remotely interested in this kind of stuff. And so it wasn't until I met Bill Stromberg and began working with him on his, you know, kind of homemade movies that, you know, I connected with anybody. And then it just kind of, you know, grew from there. But it was like, no, you're on your own. You know, you're in the lifeboat. And, you know, it's just like, thank God there's no sharks, and, you know, you don't get, you know, baked by the sun or die in a typhoon. So, you know, it was all, you know, just like, let's try this, let's try that. And back in the day, you had to mow a lot of lawns to get a stop motion frame camera. And it took months to shoot a roll of film, and the learning curve was just precipitous, because you do this stuff and you get a roll of film and you send it to Rochester, New York, and then 2 weeks later you get it back and you look at it and it's like, what the fuck? And I liken it to learning how to play the piano, which I have no idea how to do, but by analogy, like playing a piano and not being able to hear what you had done for 2 weeks or 2 months, and then hearing it and going like, what did I do? You know, and that was a learning curve. You know, it was slow.
Phil, I got one more for you. You started to touch on the armature that was in the big green guy, and how you had made that when you were 17. I mean, you know that we've had conversations about that, but do you want to just talk a little bit about where that came from? That's a neat bit of history that, you know, wound up ultimately in Star Wars.
Well, yeah, let's see. That armature started, I think when I was 17, and I had just gone into a junior college. And I was in the art department, and the teachers there that were, you know, just would let me work after, and, you know, when classes weren't in session, and so I could work on the machines, you know, and it was just basically a drill press and a sander, and, you know, learn how to tap and all this from, you know, the other guys that had more experience doing that. And I was working on an idea for a story. No, I wasn't working for, my friend, the writer, who became the writer, Greg Bear, lived in San Diego. So we were the only 2 people in San Diego that were even remotely into this stuff. And we wanted to do a feature version of William Hope Hodgson's House on the Borderland, which was insane to even think of, you know, that we could do that. But I did a design for the what's in the book as these pig monsters, these subterranean creatures that live underground. It was a black creature, and so I built a, you know, foam casting of a you know, a creature, and I shot a bunch of tests with it. But by the time, and it had a beautiful casting. Centrifugal casting in aluminum of a really elaborate skull with tusks and everything. And so I repurposed that years later when I was living in LA and I was still shooting a bunch of tests for that green guy. When we started Empire, I did not feel that I was up to the level of the quality that was required to do that job. But I was like really lucky and supported by John and Dennis in that we had, you know, a test foam casting of the Tauntaun and just a rough armature, and John had made a prototype for the Walker. And I was lucky enough, we had the first video stop motion recording devices, and I pretty much spent my time you know, once my tasks were done or I split my time, just trying to get it right. And I just spent maybe the better part of 6 months going in there, and sometimes, you know, 8, 10 hours a day. Try this, try that. And it's like, no, I don't have it. I don't have it. I don't have the weight. I don't have the mass. The creature doesn't have its own consciousness. It's like, it's not working. And then one day it was bing, and it was like, you fall off your bike, you fall off your bike, you fall off your bike, you fall off your bike. And then, I'm going 20 miles an hour. You know, it was like that.
That's outstanding.
And we pretty much got everything first take. You know, I can't think of any shots that we did at any time stop motion that were more than one take. And that was like Ray, you know.
Yeah. Is that down to, do you think that's down to good planning ahead of time, or skill or luck?
Yeah. And it's so labor intensive and takes so long, you don't want to mess it up, you know.
Jon, any additional thoughts on Phil's bike analogy there?
I think, you know, Phil said he doesn't know anything about playing a piano. Neither do I. But what you've illustrated, and I think it is such a marvelous human potential to take something, and this is where I think each of us in our own little experimentation stage in the garage, and then over at Cascade, and then the Star Wars projects. Nobody, Ray, I'm sure, didn't know how to do it, but because of the power of inspiration, you had to learn, how do I make an armature? How do I make a mold? How do I learn to sculpt something that somebody'd want to look at? And it is the power of that inspiration that is, honestly, without trying to sound too grandiose, it's the hope of humanity. You're challenged with a problem, and being driven by the inspiration that Obi and Ray and infused in us through the emotion. The emotion is really the fuel to expand the consciousness of somebody. And having something so exciting and seeing, I remember just like Phil, you'd go and you'd send this little roll of 8mm off, and it'd come back 2 weeks later. And you go, well, how did I do that? And then you see if you can stand it. Oh, I think I understand that. You do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. It's just like playing the piano. You keep, and I think they're one of the great attributes of mistakes is the learning. You can't learn. I couldn't learn without making mistakes. But it's the way human spirit seems to function time to try to achieve something greater than what you maybe even envisioned for your goals. I remember sitting in the screen room after the title roll up flew in over camera, and you're just thrown into this. Where am I? That's like what Phil was saying. What am I looking at? What is this creature? Where's the face? Where's this? Where's that? And it was just, and I remember the whole theater just went up in a roar when that scene started. An indelible memory for me, and something for which this whole experience is nothing I could have ever conceived of or wanted to do in terms of personal acknowledgement. I remembered how hard it was to find out who Ray Harryhausen was, thanks to Foray I did, and how some of this stuff was done. And to have a tiny little place in history, it was never anticipated, desired, or expected. And I feel whatever else may have happened in my life, I think, to paraphrase Lou Gehrig, I'm one of the luckiest people in the world.
I recalled something in regard to that steep learning curve You know, one of the things that I did was, God, I must have not been older than 12 years old or 13. Ray Harryhausen's, some of the excerpts from some of his movies were on 8mm, black and white.
Yeah.
Get like a 100-foot roll or something. And and they were being sold at Sears, you know, for like $8. And so my parents never went to Sears, so I had to kind of wait until friends' parents were going to go to Sears, and then I get my friend to go along with me and go into Sears, and I would steal the 8mm film. I would put them in my pants. I didn't have the money, and I had to see this stuff, and I would take it home, and I didn't have a projector. I couldn't afford that, but what I could afford was what you could buy, you know, in the joke shop or someplace, was a little plastic crank camera that had like a Laurel and Hardy skit on it. And so you could look at that and go, you could actually click, 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 you do like single frames. So that was kind of my moviola. I got, you know, with pencils and, you know, some, you know, reels and strung that up. And so I would just spend hours studying Ray's stuff one frame at a time to see how he did that. And I think, you know, at a certain point, you know, you internalize that stuff, even though you haven't turned your craft into an art yet. You know, it's you got to study, you got to study, you got to study, you got to study. And when I was working on when we were doing Empire, John and Dennis and I went out and shot kind of Muybridge shots of elephants, and we shot a horse on the beach for the tauntaun and elephants for the walkers. And I would just make tons of notes on Dragon Slayer. It was like a telephone book full of notes of all the gates, and there's like different kind of choreography processes that you can do with, you know, how footfalls work and blah, blah, blah. And you just like build up this huge volume of stuff. And then on the day, I would just throw that, you know, thing in the trash and start. You know, and I had done, you know, all the internalizing that I feel I needed to, you know. I mean, even, you know, on Dragon Slayer, when we were shooting, when the stop motion video camera was set up, you couldn't actually use it to analyze your shot unless you shot it through a beam splitter, because the only thing that mattered is what the lens was seeing. And if you're off just a few axes, it's not even the same performance. And so what I would do is I would get a Polaroid camera, set it up exactly where the shooting camera would be, and I would block the key poses out and make a little flip book. And that was how I could, you know, okay, yeah, that's gonna work. He's like, oops, no, don't do that.
I got to get here to here to here.
Right.
You know, Jon, you mentioned one of my favorite things, and that is the what you can benefit from failure. And I have a phrase around here, it's error and trial sometimes. And, you know, people ask like, oh, how'd you learn how to do this? And I'm like, error and trial. I learned how to do it by not being able to do it for 10 years, and then I could do it, you know? Creature inspiration just in general, you know, the chess pieces in particular, all these creatures are so wild, they're so varied. If you were to lay them all out as we've now kind of been doing and look at them individually, you know, they could have come from 10 different brains or whatever. Do you think this comes from within you? Do you think this flows through you? Do you think it's a reflection of things that you've seen? So for each of you, I guess, just a quick, like, where does this come from? Where do these designs come out of?
Well, two examples I can give was on Return of the Jedi, and one was Jabba the Hutt, and the other was the Rancor character. And when we were doing designs, a number of us were contributing to what Jabba could be, and it was Ralph McQuarrie and Joe Johnston and Nilo and I. And I tend to like to work with maquettes. Well, everything starts with the script, you know, and so that tells you what to do. But in the case of like Jabba's palace, George's direction and what was in the script is you go to Jabba's palace and there's a party going on with a bunch of space creatures, and so what George did was he had me assemble a team of about 3 or 4 sculptors, and I couldn't find people that were really that good, and John had left by that time, and so we would put together just out of the blue, these different creatures, and so at the end of every week, George would come by, and there may be a half a dozen things that we had done, and he'd pull this out, and he goes like, well, this one will be the singer in the band, and this one will be playing the piano, and this one will, and then he would just go on like that, and then he would kind of write the script and do the storyboards, and Ralph would do concept paintings all around that, and then it was some would be like, well, what's this? And I go, well, that's a calamari man, and he goes, it's Admiral Akbar now. That. And then for Jabba, we were all kind of shooting in the dark, and I like to work with maquettes, and George responded really well to that. With the 2D stuff, there was a tendency to do this. Well, can you try one with these legs and that one with that mouth and bigger fangs or whatnot? But when George could actually see a 3-dimensional physical thing, he could turn it in his hand, and he could see it in the movie. He saw the character, with light on it. And he operated a lot more like a kind of a documentary filmmaker, and going out and finding the aliens that he wanted, and and then he incorporated that into the movie. I mean, it was not in the script. And eventually, we were all kind of stuck on Jabba, and he, and frustrated. And I asked him, if you could cast any actor to play the part of Jabba, who would it be? And he thought for a second, and he said, Sidney Greenstreet. And that was the direction that I needed. Then I totally got it, and did this maquette that he accepted. And for Rancor, I always had to have like some kind of a concept or a touchstone, and just kind of didn't do it in the dark. Just some kind of gravitational center that I could put this thing around. And for me, the Rancor was a cross between a bear and a potato. And so and with that, then I could start. And it ended up not being anything like that, but it kind of sort of did.
Yeah. So do you often find yourself crossing animal and vegetable, and then there's your direction? It's a little like when someone's pitching a show, they're like, it's like The Honeymooners, but also Taxi, it's like, do you sometimes just throw stuff like that out there, and then that combination leads to something explosive and new?
No, I mean, most of the time, the ideas are settled in the script, like Dragon Slayer was a mean crotchety old dragon, and then you just kind of take it from there. So that's always the starting point. George was unusual in his quasi-documentary approach, to things, but and at a certain point, I'm pretty good with organic stuff, but Jon Berg and Joe Johnson had to work out the walkers, you know, because I don't have an inclination towards mechanical stuff at all. And so then when I went on to do, you know, RoboCop and RoboCop 2 and then Starship Troopers, it was like, you know, I'd done what I had done, and that part of my life was over. And I found a brilliant young guy who had a great sense of engineering, Craig Hayes. And so I worked with Craig for years, and we kind of had a Lennon-McCartney kind of a relationship where, you know, he's so good, he's 100 times better than I am. You know, Craig designed all that stuff, and it was terrific, and it was exciting because I didn't have to do it. And then, you know, you could see the stuff fresh. You just see this thing, you go bang, wow, that's exciting.
I love in the RoboCop stuff that even the mechanical stuff has an organic feel in how it moves and acts, so to speak, you know, how it performs. Ed 209 is way more than just a mechanical thing, and he doesn't move like a computer graphic, he doesn't move like a robot, he moves like a thing that exists and has feelings and emotions. And
you know, you get that from the thing. The thing kind of tells you what to do. I mean, it's the same thing, it's a similar but different from wearing a costume or putting on a mask. And throughout history, you know, in rituals and whatnot, and shaman would become animals by putting on the wolf costume or whatever. And I was, when we were doing Return of the Jedi, there was nobody around to, you know, get into the little blue guy that we called, Joe Johnson called him Red Ball Jet, because the maquette that I did had these little blue balls in it. They wasn't a piano player yet. And so we mocked up a piano and nobody was around. So I got into the outfit, and George had chosen Super Freak as the temp sound. And so the, you know, thing started, and I'm in the suit and I'm doing the piano thing. And my wife Jules walks in and goes, "Where's Phil?" And they say, "Well, he's in the suit. He's playing the blue guy." And she said, "That's impossible. You know, he has absolutely no sense of rhythm, which I don't. And he can't be in that suit." And I took the suit off, and there I was, and it was like, I didn't know, you know, at all. I wasn't even trying to act. I incorporated it. Same thing as like with the shaman. You become that thing, you know, intuitively, you know. So, and I think it's the same for a lot of people that wear, you know, outfits and creatures, you know, and stuff like that.
It embodies, at some point, it embodies you rather than you being inside of it.
Yeah.
I think Carol Spinney, who played Big Bird on Sesame Street, had said once that he had a show where he had a dance, and he said he didn't know how to dance, and he was very, very nervous going into the scene. And the scene came off, and he played it beautifully, and the dance was perfect. And at the end of it, he says, I didn't know how to dance, but I guess Big Bird did.
Yeah, you're so free, you know, because it's the character that knows how to do that stuff, you know?
Yeah. Jon, where do you think these creatures come from when you're sculpting up these little guys?
You know, I think all of this, in large measure, is a synthesis of who we are in our individual everyday lives, what attracts us, what hits our emotional buttons. In talking about this, it makes me recall, I wonder if you remember this, Phil, when we were doing the Cantina things off of those wonderful Ron Cobb sketches, you appeared to me in my memory to have had an epiphany. You went, I see what he's doing. these are all different kinds of animals that exist, and he has reorganized and reintegrated and modified them into these new concepts of living creatures. And that makes me think of one of my favorite quotes, that nature is the master teacher. And that was purported to come from Da Vinci. And I think all of that stuff is driven by an emotional, subconscious engine that we draw all of this stuff in. Yeah, I think back and listening to Phil and Dennis, these things that pop you completely out of the so-called mundane real world. All of Ray's stuff, King Kong. There's not a big monkey like that, and it wouldn't. How did they? It just snaps you out of your expectations of what is possible, even conceptually, or maybe primarily conceptually, and it's really, really interesting. It's like all of the stuff, the Hieronymus Bosch. Where the hell did that stuff come from? And I think life propels forward, at least in terms of art, of people building on each other's inspirations, generation to generation. I remember you did Phil, you did a commentary around the time that the first Jurassic Park was out there, and you made a wonderful comment that has been applied in this form of expression to many fields, but you said we were all standing on the shoulders of those that came before us. And then I think it's so wonderful to have been able to contribute to that continuum through the things we've all been able to participate in and create. I think it's what piques my interest. And then, as Phil has put so well, you look at a script, what is the demands of this? What am I trying to capture here? And that Sydney Greenstreet thing, boy, that's the key. If you get that, you can synthesize stuff moving towards kind of an abstract notion. Who's Sydney Greenstreet? There's a whole bunch of stuff from his movies that we intake, and it goes out through our hands and fingers and our sensibility, but it's all part of that boiling subconscious mind that creates so many wonderful things on all levels, technology or artistry.
The LA artist Kenneth Price, when asked in an interview, what is the difference between craft and art? He said a craftsman knows what they're doing and an artist doesn't. that is the best definition I've actually ever heard. Because it's like it's all the mistakes, all add up to an experience that you would never arrive at any other way with doing it wrong 100 times.
Yeah. To wrap us up, so total side question. Phil, do you give people budgets in number of lawns that need to be mowed? Because that seemed to be your unit of measure whenever we were talking about.
Yeah, it was just $1.50 flat rate.
Nice.
Big money back then.
For both lawns, front yard and backyard.
Nice.
Ooh.
Do you ever clean out the beds and stuff too? Trim the shrubs? Is that extra?
No, I did that. I lived in San Diego in the bloody fucking desert practically, and the hills, to keep them from eroding, had a lot of ice plant that grew really fast, like triffids. And so I chopped a lot of ice plant too. That was $5 per.
Oh, well. Hey, you gotta buy film somehow. So Dennis mentioned something before. He said that George at some point picked up one of the characters and said, people would want to buy this. We're now about to find out if that's true. How does it feel to know? So we've just revealed these to people as of the time of this recording. We've only just shown some of this stuff to people of this set, and they're all really excited about it. How does it feel to know that you know, people are excited to bring these little guys into their homes?
Go for it, John, because I'll probably just see, yeah, what John said.
John?
I think it goes back to, well, unintended consequences. I never thought that anybody, I always wished we'd had more time to do what we did with what we had. And that the thing has lived so long and people have kind of embraced it, is really, really stunning to me. And I hope, by the way, in that context, I have to agree with Phil. I just I've mentioned this to you before, but the videos and the stills you've sent me based on Phil's renditions, the files on these original things, which were literally thrown together, and your fidelity, your whole crew's wonderful reproduction of this, including changes in poses and things, which is really terrific. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how else to put some. The idea that I would ever do or participate in anything on such a scale, I was thrilled to be able to participate in them, but I never ever envisioned anything like having this conversation that we've enjoyed here for the last hour or so. It's a stunning experience, and I'm really grateful and amazed.
Oh, thank you very much, John. We put a lot of effort into this.
Add to that, you know, it's just, I think the fascination with a lot of this stuff and inspiration is in our collective consciousness, and goes back to prehistoric times, Egyptian times, early China. There's a fascination with like miniature stuff, small stuff. And go to the British Museum and all the Egyptian stuff that they raped from the Egyptians. It's like 100 yards of little tchotchkes and whatnot. And, you know, it was all of those little things just are fascinating. And I recall, I think one of the biggest influences in my life that I didn't realize is, like, when I was a kid, what I really wanted were these play sets that you could buy, you know, and I would get them, say, for Christmas, a Mark's play set of cavemen and dinosaurs. And it was like $5. And so that would last me for 6 months. And I would go out and play with them in the backyard and come up with little scenarios and plans and characters and all this stuff. And then I'd lose half of them. I'd bury them in the backyard, or the dog would chew them up or whatever. And the next year I'd get a World War II, you know, thing. And then by then I was into melting army soldiers. And then I had, you know, only 15 army soldiers left. And then I got Cowboys and Indians, and then I got Crime Scene. And so it was just like, then you had like all these different worlds that were coming together. And I know that's what, you know, really was the very beginning impetus for, you know, wanting to become a filmmaker, and just being able to use one's, you know, imaginative world as a stage, you know, on which to you know, create these, you know, scenarios. So yeah, that all was really important to me. But it's the small stuff, you know, and you know, where you're big and they're small and you're moving them around. And I know I talked to Ray about this, and he said he'd been accused of having a God complex. You have a God complex, Phil? I'm like, I don't think so. But then looking back on it, it's like,
you know what? I mean, everybody I know that's in, you know, the sort of FX industry that's my age, it was the same story, but it was Star Wars figures, you know. it was Cantina monsters and Tauntaun little action figures, and trying to set the scene and trying to tell your own story. You know, we couldn't go back and watch the movie again, so it would exist in the form of the toys and the stories that we came up with. And I don't know, I mean, all these years later, in a way, I'm still just playing with toys, you know. Like, maybe the toys are a little better, but at the core, I'm still just that little kid.
Yeah, really.
That reminds me of the first time through Cascade.
Yeah.
And watching a wonderful man, also a huge contribution to my life, David Allen. But watching him work on a Hans the Chocolate Man set, and then going back further into stage 6, they had a set of display cabinets with all the little Doughboy replacement figures when he'd pop out of the tube. And the whole place was like a kind of a hyper-tech Toyland. And that thing, I don't think that'll ever leave me, because I share that thing with Phil, and it sounds like our predecessors here. There is something, you can hold the world in your hand kind of with some of these little figures, and then through this really amazing technique of applying patience and skill, move it around, and I don't think I'll ever get past the magic of seeing something I've made move by itself. Even when it was poorly done when I was just a kid, it was like, wow, what a wonderful magic illusion. It's really powerful, obviously, or we're still talking about it the X number of years after my childhood has evaporated. It's magic.
That little child's still in there.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for being a part of, you know, both the chess set edition that we're doing for folks and this chat here. I just had an absolute blast, as always. So thank you both for everything you've done and for being a part of this.
Well, thank you for doing this stuff and doing such a great job. You know, it's great.
Before I close off, I just wanted to thank you, as Phil did. Ever since I first got acquainted with you, it was really clear to me, and you really feel this. It's like a tuning fork when you have a harmonic resonance with somebody. And from the first time I met you, all the wonderful people in all the different studios I've worked with, Cascade is such a cornerstone for me. And the camaraderie, the first time I ever met a bunch of people that had the same sensibility, had really kind hearts. I want to pay tribute to Jim Danforth and Tom Sandoval. They're integral, powerful and wonderful people in my life. And you resonate with all of that. And I'm very grateful to have you for a friend. And I'm so proud of what you've done for the chess pieces. They're magnificent. Thank you.
Thank
I hope they're a huge success.
I do too, and I'm honored to have you as a friend as well. And I know that my wife sends her best. She actually joked when I told her how long the talk would be. She's like, "But it's going to be you and Jon, so add 3 hours." You know.
Oh dear, she knows me too well. I know she knows you really well.
Exactly.
Oh,
well,
give her my very best, will you?
Again, big thanks to you both. I really, really appreciate all the time you give me. And Phil, thanks again for the digital help on this. All of just every time I asked you questions and all the memories and thoughts helping us get this right. You guys, really helped me make this what it could be. And I'm so excited for people to, be able to finally see them and see what we've been working on for so long.
My pleasure.
All righty. Have a great day, Phil. Thanks so much. Jon, I'm sure we'll talk soon. Thank you again.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Everybody have a good day.
Hi there. Hey, Jon, are you on the phone?
No, but I got it in my hand.
Oh, all right, goodbye.